I should have been a cowboy. I should have learned to rope around.
You have a beer this morning. I guess I should say afternoon. I do not.
I do. You know what? I thought no better time to celebrate first episode in Whitman, Arizona. We finally got everything down here, and I'm very excited about it because we've done a lot of driving over the past week and a half.
Bro, you really have. You deserve that beer. You want to crack it open for us and get this episode started?
I will. I don't know how intense it's going to be because it is a bottle
Do it
opener,
like champagne, like you won the Formula One race.
get the champagne rolling. There, did you hear that? It kind of sounded like a loose fart. It was like,
You gotta love those Victorias.
oh, I'm very excited. Here we go. First sip of the day.
I've never had a Victoria, but this episode of Should Have Been a Cowboy is brought to you by Victoria, la mejor cerveza de Mexico.
Dos, porfa.
All right, speaking of Victoria, we're going into a female theme here, I think. You know, we've been drinking different kinds of beers, but today you grabbed Victoria for a specific reason. Cowboy Cole, who is our guest on the show today?
We have a very, very cool, unique guest that we're bringing on. We have the one and only Amber Marshall, aka Amy Fleming, from the notorious TV show Heartland.
Oh, so excited, buddy. She is someone that, you know, has created a career that she dreamed of. That's one of the questions I'm going to ask her because she loved horses growing up and she loved acting. What are the chances that like God just gives you this perfect role that unites everything you love and then you get to do it for like 18 plus years?
That's the thing
How
is,
insane is that?
yeah, exactly, right? Like you found you found a way to make your niche work for you. And then already in that industry, TV and film, man, like it's hard to go the distance that they've gone. 18 seasons. And like we're gonna have a good BS with her about all this because that is a long time.
Yeah, man, it's unbelievable. Like I keep thinking to do anything, bro, for 5, 10 years, like a decade is a long time. Most people, their careers will change every 5, 6 years. And they have done this for 18 years. I can't imagine as much as it's fun and it's, you know, it's given her this amazing life. You know, it's how she makes her money and she's known all over the world now. This thing is like insane in Brazil. Like every time I post a photo of Alberta, it's the first comment I get is I love Heartland. And but to do that for 18 years, man, that's got to be tough to wake up in the morning and do the same thing. So I'm also interested to ask her about that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, this is literally filmed almost in my backyard. Like the Heartland Ranch set
Yeah.
is about 35 minutes from my mom and dad's place. And yeah, so it's kind of got a cool connection for myself and even you living in that territory now. Like it's right down the road, man, which is really cool because it's like you said, it's known all over the world. You don't go anywhere without people being like, "Oh, you're from Alberta? Do you watch Heartland?" And you're just
It's
like,
literally putting Alberta on the map, bro. Over 100 countries, like it's insane. But also the cool part about this, I don't want to talk too much because we're gonna bring her on and she's gonna tell us all about it, give us an amazing interview. But she's a real horsewoman. She lives it, you know. She could have been living in Los Angeles drinking lattes every day, but she's out there milking Jersey cows and feeding her ducks and her chickens and her horses before she goes out and films these episodes, which is I think an easy commute for her. You would know better than me where she lives and where she works is pretty close, right? But anyways, the real deal. Let's get into it. Amber Marshall.
"Hey, Amber, how's it going?"
Hey, Amber.
There we go. Now I can hear you guys. Good. How are you?
Phenomenal.
Good. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for giving us your valuable time here this morning.
Oh, yeah. My pleasure.
Are you back home in Alberta?
I am at the moment. Yes. Yeah. I'll
You've
be
been.
here. I've
Go
been
ahead.
home. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, to start us off here, tell us. I was trying to see where you were, like, as we're coming up here today, and you were everywhere and back. Your schedule is insane. Where have you been?
Yeah. I started out. So we finished filming Heartland at the end of October, or sorry, at the end of August. And so then I kind of planned my September, October, November just to be the 3 months of packed travel. So I was in Ontario and then I was in BC, and then I was in Kentucky, and then I was in Miami, and then I was back on the West Coast, and then I was most recently, then I went back to Toronto a couple times, and then most recently I was in Ohio. So yeah,
Wow. You sound like Cowboy Cole these days. Cowboy Cole and Amber Marsh are on the move.
Nonstop, my man. Question about Kentucky. Were you happen to be down there visiting Dan James?
I sure was.
Yeah, I want to jump right to that, honestly, because he is a very special guy and has very special animals. Can you tell us a little bit about Dan James and his Liberty horses?
Yeah, well, I first had the opportunity to meet Dan on the set of Heartland. And in the past and present, we use a lot of Liberty horses to kind of capture all the scenes that we need to have the horses acting, so to speak. And for anyone who's worked with animals knows that it can either make or break your time, right? And on the set of Heartland, we move at a very fast pace. So if we're waiting for a horse to think about doing that one specific ask and it's going to take a really long time, that's valuable moments for us on set. So when you bring people in that you know can get the job done and you know that their animals are the best of the best, it makes all of our lives a lot easier. And so when Dan came on set, instantly everybody was like, whoa, he's good. And it was just this kind of consistent idea throughout the whole cast and crew that, okay, this is going to be a great day and these horses are going to be awesome for what we need. And, you know, I'm sure those who know Dan aren't shocked by that. But every time I watch him work his horses, I'm in awe. I just look and I go, wow. For someone who is so calm and quiet and put together, and his horses just listen. And I think that that's something that's taught me a lot too, because I always thought, well, horses are big animals, in order for them to really understand you, you have to be firm and you have to be like this greater presence. And I look at him and he's just at one with his herd. His energy is so calm and quiet. And I really respect that about him. And he brings that to every engagement that he's doing. So when he's on set, there is this almost form of meditation that goes through the entire cast and crew because they're just sitting there taking it all in, going, why is he so calm? Like, this is usually a very frantic place, and he's just got this energy. So I went down to Kentucky for the Liberty Horse Festival, and Dan and his wife Elizabeth put that on, and oh man, just incredible stuff. And the people, and that's how you can always tell someone's a good person, is the people that they surround themselves with and the people that choose to be with them. And again, I was just in awe at all of the talent and just the real calming energy that surrounded that place and everyone that was a part of it. So that was a really special visit for me, and I hope to be able to do it again in the future.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. He's
absolutely.
one of the best in the world. They cool like talk about him and how much he's done for horsemanship. And I would love the opportunity. I can't even imagine going down to his place and hanging out with him and his animals. Like, what's like how much of a better horsewoman do you think that these past 18 years doing the show have made you? Because we all know that you were practically born on a horse. You love horses from a very young age. But, obviously just examples like this to be able to hang out with Dan and other professionals, how has that influenced your life as an equestrian?
Well, I think as with anything, we are only as good as the people that we surround ourselves with. And
Yeah.
to be able to have that opportunity is number one. So if I was just the horse loving girl from London, Ontario, hanging out with my quarter horse, going out in the field, just kind of learning as I go, maybe watching. Back then, YouTube wasn't even really much of a thing. So it's not like there was areas that I could go to self-teach or to be helped by other professionals. And so just the opportunity of being on Heartland has given so many external opportunities with people like Dan and Nikki Flundra and incredible horse people who I don't think I ever would have had the opportunity to be around. And, I guess I shouldn't hold anyone back. You always have the means to put yourself out there and try to learn from the best. But just being on the show has allowed me not just to meet so many incredible horse people, but to sit alongside them and witness what they do and take it all in and be taught by them, which I think is invaluable. And you're right. I think back to 18 years on the show. And when I started on Heartland, I had a horse, but again, I was just sort of doing my own thing. I had done some English hunter jumper lessons for a few years prior, and then I moved into the Western world. But coming on the set of Heartland, all of a sudden you have the best of the best available, and on a daily basis, which is
Yeah.
another a really cool thing because a lot of us, they have the opportunities to go and take clinics and go visit these people and take in their knowledge, but it's usually a very limited time event. You know, you go to a
And you
weekend.
become friends with them, right? Which is
Yeah.
different. Like as
Well,
opposed
and
to me
that's the
going to a
thing
clinic
too.
with Dan or him working Heartland with Amber. Like it's a different
Yes.
connection, right?
No, and you're exactly right. And not just Dan. I love Dan, but I gotta hand it to all
Yeah.
of the people that have been involved with Heartland and the different things I've learned from each one of them. You know, everybody has their own style. Everybody
Yeah.
has something that works for them. And I believe it's what matches with their energy and the way that they communicate with horses. Because we all know no human is the same and no
Yeah.
horse is the same.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's a balance of energies. And the way that I walk into a field of horses and the way that you or Dan might walk into a field of horses is completely different.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so that's what I find invaluable is watching how each person resonates with the situation they're in and how they move forward in a positive way. And so what can I take from that? You know, I might not have that super zen, calm energy that Dan has, but how can I take a little bit of what he does and create that in myself so that I can move forward with my horses in a positive way and make it, you know, productive in what I'm trying to accomplish.
Man, that
Yeah,
is
that's
incredible. I feel like
yeah.
a massive event full of Liberty horse trainers is a lot more calm, cool, and collected than a team roping jackpot.
You are dead on there. But I love that you brought that up because that's something, and I think, you know, every discipline will make fun of the next discipline. That's just human nature. We always look at different
Yeah.
things. Oh, yeah, I bet that would happen there, whatever it might be. But again, I feel like you learn things from each different person that you can take into your own life. And it's being open to it. As soon as we put our blinders on and say, I would never do that, or that's not something, you automatically shut down the learning experience. So for me, and I am no stranger to sitting in the stands and watching, you know, 150 teams come out in a team roping jackpot all day and going, wow, that guy really, he must have just got on his horse yesterday and it's been out in the field for 4 months and whoa, this is going to be fun. And you observe, right? You take it all in, but at the same
Yeah.
time, what are you doing? You're learning. You're
Yeah.
understanding why that might have gone not the way they planned it. Or, you know, why are you fighting with that horse when you haven't asked this of it for 5 months and all of a sudden you decide, I'm just gonna, and that's not just team roping, that's any discipline.
Yeah.
It's like we expect that they're going to be in the exact same place that we left off. But when some, you know, that doesn't happen with horses. I mean, there's a few unicorns out there that they're the exact same horse the day
Yeah.
you rode them, you know, 5 months ago. But I think that our expectations have to be at that same level of what that horse is thinking. And so many of us, including myself, you know, we set the bar maybe a little too high for what we're expecting from our horses and we get out there and I'm a busy person. I don't get to ride my own horses very often. And so I'll jump on and I'll go and I'll be like, "Why? Why are you doing this? Like you know how to do this." And then
Yeah,
I have to
exactly.
tell myself, settle down. You know, you're not, that's not fair because
Yeah.
you haven't even been on this horse in four
Yeah.
months,
You
right?
were perfect 4 months ago. Like, what's wrong with you, right? And I think patience is a huge virtue, and it's something that horses teach us on a regular basis, right? Along with humility and so
Yes.
many other lessons. But I want to jump back here, Amber, a little bit to 18 years ago. It just boggles my mind that you've done this for 18 years because to do any job for past though more than 5-6 years is already hard enough. How do you how do you continue to feel passionate about something that you've done for almost 2 decades?
I think the key is that I am passionate about this project. And if I was doing something that I didn't feel a connection to, you know, say, I always use this example because I can't even imagine being in this situation. But let's say I was on a show that filmed on a spaceship in a studio with a green screen every day for 18 years.
Yeah.
Would I have the same enthusiasm? I don't know. You know, I don't think I would. I don't think
Yeah.
I'd be like, yes, I get to get on that spaceship again. And the thing I love so much about Heartland is that it's who I am. I'm not trying to be anyone I'm not. I am a horse-loving rural cowgirl. That's just, I love it. It's to my core. And so every day when I go to set and I get to be in some of the most beautiful locations in Alberta, in my opinion, probably even in North America.
Yeah.
And I get to be with horses every day, which is something that to my core I have loved since I could talk. That to me is a living. It's not a job. It's not something that I'm like, "Oh, I got to go to work." It's just me being present with who I am and what I love. So I think that's the
Yeah.
key with anything, right? I always say, like, do what you love and you won't have to work a day in your life. We've all heard that saying, but it's so true in the sense that, you know, you need to enjoy what you're doing in order to do a good job. Because if
I,
you don't enjoy
yeah.
what you're doing, you don't bring your best self and you don't want to put the effort in because you're not enjoying it. Nobody wants to do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think success is a reflex of that. Of you loving what you do and doing it with passion. But sorry, Cole, just one more question. This is a two-parter. Doing this for so long, and like you said, there are so many parallels between you and the character, right? Like you live this life. You live in Alberta. You feed your animals every day. You ride horseback. There's so many parallels. How difficult is that for you as an actress? Like, where does Amy finish and Amber begin? Like, are you having nightmares about the plot line? Like, what's happening? Like, what is your mind like?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of times when I just feel like I'm living my life on set and vice versa. There's
Yeah.
so many parallels. And not only that, but since the show's been going on for so long, the writers have got to know me on a personal level. So I believe that they have started writing Amy to be more like me. And then vice versa, I moved from Ontario to Alberta for the show. So I have become more like Amy just in that whole transition of where I'm living.
Right.
And so I think in a sense, maybe the character of Amy and myself started further apart than they are now. But over time of that transition of me becoming an Albertan and living the life that Amy lives, having my horses and cows and dogs and everything out my back door, that's very different. I'm a very different person than when I started on the show and I was living with my parents in a city. Still had animals in my life, but I had to drive to go see my horses. My horses were boarded. Very different lifestyle, right? I didn't wake up in the morning and go do chores. I was a city girl. And even though I always knew in my core that this is the life I wanted, and even from a very young age, I would go through the real estate magazines. I would bring them home. They always had those free real estate magazines. I would circle all the farm properties and say, Mom, Dad, we got to get this one. Like I was
Nice.
like on a mission from, very young age that I knew I wanted to live on a property where I could have all of my animals in one place. So I think that that's always been inside me, but the fact that I was able to actually do it and to move out west and to have my own property with my animals here, that has made me understand my character a lot better, live the life, so to speak. That's the best training an actor could ever have is actually
Yeah.
just walking the walk that
Yeah.
their character does. And then, like I said, in turn, my character, the writers have gotten to know me and my mannerisms and, just the way that I talk. And so I feel like Amy is now written closer to Amber. So it's kind of a journey that happened together.
What's that
That's so
kind of
interesting.
like? This kind of veered me from the question I had locked and loaded, but in terms of working with the writers, them getting to know you, them writing better for you, do you get an opportunity to kind of pitch on lines, pitch ideas, jokes, anything like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that it is a full collaboration of all of the actors and the writing team to understand that character because we also have new writers that come on board every year. And so I like to say that each of us who have been playing this role for, beyond a decade, some of us almost 2 decades, we understand our characters. And so sometimes a new script will come out and we'll be reading through it and I'll be like, I don't know that I would handle that way. Or,
Mm.
we understand even just the inflections of how we talk. And so the writers are very open to that. And when the script first comes out, it's usually about 3 weeks to a month before we actually shoot it. So we'll read through the script, and then each of the actors have a different method, I guess you would say. And for example, like Sean Johnston, who plays Grandpa Jack, he's very set on getting word for word correct in the script before we go to camera. So he wants it to sound exactly Grandpa Jack and how it would come out of his mouth on the day. So he'll go through and he'll write every line how he wants to say them. He'll go into the writers. They kind of edit those tweaks and make sure that it's in the script. I like to let it flow a little bit because there's usually, 3 or 4 or 5 drafts of a script that come out. So I'll read the first one. I go, and if there's any large structural changes, like let's say there's a horse problem that I'm like, I don't know that I like this. Like this doesn't make sense, or, maybe it's not right for this character or whatever it might be. I'll go into the writers and say, is there any way, instead of being deaf, this horse could be blind, or like whatever it might
Mm,
be that would affect the entire storyline, we'll tackle right away because that usually affects all the other departments. But if it's something like a line of dialogue that I don't quite understand or I don't think suits my character, I'll just wait. I'll leave it, I'll let it resonate because sometimes in the next draft, they'll have already caught that and they'll have changed it anyway. So I don't worry about specific dialogue early on. But then once we go through our read through, which happens typically only a few days before we start filming, I'll go through and I'll circle and highlight and cross out and do all that in the read through as we're reading it out loud. Because that's another thing. Sometimes you read something in your head and it
Yeah.
sounds funny or it
mhm.
sounds fine.
Yeah.
And then you read it out loud with a group of people and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound right. Or, oh, it sounds better out loud, right? Like there's two ways to go about it.
Yeah.
So I wait until the read through and then I make all my big scribbles and notes on my script. And then I sit down with the writers after that and I say, hey, is there any way we can like tweak this or turn this around? And there's sometimes that I'll just wait until I'm on set in the moment. If it's something small, like if it's just one line where I'm supposed to say like, he jumped too soon or whatever like that, I'll wait until it happens and then I can ad lib on the day, judging by what the horse actually did.
Mm,
So if,
huge.
if it's a round pen scene with me and a horse and I'm supposed to have a bunch of dialogue, if I'm teaching someone, I don't even worry about that dialogue until we're in the scene shooting it because you never know what that horse is going to do. And so I want to be able to react naturally and I will most likely ad lib most of that scene depending on what the horse is actually doing. So that's
Wow.
something too, is they give us a lot of creative flexibility to be able to work in the moment. But as far as actual story ideas and structural stuff from the beginning, I feel like our writing team is really open and there's a lot of collaboration that happens. We go in early on and pitch ideas and different things that we would like to see in the upcoming season, and that's a really fun process for all of us as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you exactly that. Like, what's been an idea? Has there been an idea that you've pitched and then you saw it come out on the screen, and what
Yeah.
was that like for you?
It is cool. There's been lots actually over the years, and I'm trying to think of most recently in the newest season something. Um, but just knowing that we have that open conversation, and then when you read it, and sometimes it's funny, I'll pitch things, and then not that I'm disappointed when they don't happen, but I'm like, oh, that would have been a really good story. But then they come out in the next season. So sometimes
Nice.
it's something that wasn't quite ready for that moment, or maybe they'd already had all their ideas. And so it's interesting for me to be able to be like, oh, there's that idea. I thought that would be great. And I talked about that 2 years ago. And now it's coming to fruition. So it's cool that way too, to be a part of a journey that has such longevity because you can explore those stories year after year and they don't have to be,
Yeah.
right in that present moment.
Well, the longevity shows and it shows the collaboration from top to bottom. And I'm a big believer in you have to listen to the people with boots on the ground. You are the ones with boots in the dirt, running the lines, trying to make these scenarios feel real. And they do because 18 seasons is nothing
Yeah.
to shake a stick at, right? Like,
Well, I appreciate you saying that too, because we do try to create an authentic experience for the viewers. And, you know, me being a horse person myself, there's nothing worse than watching a show with animals or horses or something that you're passionate about and you're like,
Yeah.
that makes no sense at all.
yeah.
And just things that you
Yeah.
want to make sure that the audience, because we have to remember that 85% of our audience knows nothing about horses.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So they're just going to be watching for the experience of, the connection, the family relationships, all of that kind of stuff. And that's not to say that they don't value the horses in the show. I think a lot of people watch because they're so captivated by the horse itself, whether they've ever been around one or not. But I want to make sure that people like yourselves that tune into the show, you're not going to be like, that makes no sense. Why did they do that? Now, with that being said, it is a fictitious show.
Yeah.
And it is something that we have to create the drama for. So there's been a
Yeah.
few things that have happened in the show that I myself, I read it and I go, this doesn't really make sense, or it wouldn't happen that way, or, something like that. But then I have to take it back to a point of it has to be dramatic. We have to create these high stakes so
Yeah.
that viewers are going to want to watch because nobody wants to watch paint drying, right? Like it's got
Yeah.
to have
It's
some
not a documentary. Everyone
This
out there
isn't
is like, she didn't clean her horse's hooves before she rode him.
exactly. Well,
this
and
isn't
timeline,
hobby
that's
horse in
you're
here.
exactly right. Because timelines are crazy. I'm like, how come Amy always fixes a horse in a day? I'm like, this and they're like, well, because nobody wants to sit there through 5 episodes watching you
Yeah.
down pen a horse. I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
sense. So we
Exactly.
we stretch that a little bit with the realism of it and having those timelines, because that's one thing I do always bring up. I'm like, does Amy only bring in a horse for a weekend and then it goes home? Like the majority of horse trainers, they'll have a horse for 30 to 60 to 90 days before they have any real progress that they're going to want to return it. And I just always laugh. I'm like, well, Amy's a miracle girl. She can get it done in 24 hours.
She doesn't
she
need 90 days. Give her
she doesn't
24
need 90
hours.
days. So there's things like that happen, but I always just say in my head, I'm like, it's television. We have,
Of
a
course.
full week that happens in an hour.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to really understand those timelines and just kind of let it not think about it.
Yeah, exactly. But you guys do a phenomenal job on it. And I think numbers, numbers don't lie. Like 18 years, like that is insane to me. But I want to go back to 18 years ago. Next year, Amy's going to be older than Amber. Do you realize that? First of all, what is that like?
Well, I feel like because I've now been playing, I've been playing this, you're right. I've been playing this role longer than I haven't been playing the role.
Yeah, she's older than you. You've been Amy longer than you've been Amber.
That's kind of crazy to think about.
I feel like I'm still Amber when I'm playing Amy. So hopefully I haven't completely lost myself.
I don't even know who I am anymore.
Lost
somewhere in
yourself
there,
on
too.
season 10. We didn't want to tell you.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, you're right, because it is very strange to be in any occupation, any job, a single job for 18, 19, maybe 20 years. Who knows how long this thing is going. But it's also extremely rewarding because you learn every year, you learn how to do your job better, or at least you should. Anything you're doing, you should be growing and you should be finding out ways to make it simpler, but also just to make your work better. And I think that's one thing that I've really learned to do over the years. It's like, how do I make what I'm doing efficient and still enjoy it, but also be growing? And that's probably more the thing I struggle with than, you brought up, how do you still have passion, or how do you still love a job after being in it so long?
Yeah.
I think that that's not really the question. The question is, how do you continue to grow? How do you continue to learn in a job that you have been doing for so long? And that goes with anything that anyone's doing, because you get to a point where it's like, well, I've learned everything, but you've never learned everything, right? So
You're
it's
dead
like,
if you learned everything.
yes. So it's like, how do you keep an open mind to continually take in new knowledge and grow in the same position that you've been in? Because technically, I've been in the same position for 18 years. So it's like learning how to do that job more efficiently and still enjoying it, doing it with purpose. So I think that's the overall question. But yeah, I think, to be able to say that I have been Amy longer than I have been Amber is a very, very strange concept. But you're right. It's kind of, I've lived these two lives for a very long time.
This
I'm
is
a
an
dude.
intervention. I just want to let you know.
I was gonna run a line from
You are not Amy.
Your entire family's here.
Yeah.
Guys, come in the Zoom.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
But did you when you this is what I love about your story, because I really believe in the power of the mind and manifesting things. And hearing you say about looking through the magazines, you're gonna get a farm, but you literally you loved horses, you love acting. All of a sudden, bam, when you're 18 years old, here comes this perfect opportunity that if it came a year earlier or 2 years later, might not have been the right time. Did you manifest this job, number one? And number two, what was that moment like when you found out you actually got the part?
I think that's something we don't talk about enough is manifestation. And I love
100%.
that you just brought it
Well,
up.
talk to me more because I talk about that often.
Amen.
Yes. So I myself, it's not something that's not a word I ever use, but I am very, very intuitive into bringing things into the universe.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so I think for me, you think about something long enough and you put it out there, you're going to expose yourself to opportunities that you might have overlooked otherwise. And that's what I think of as manifestation is that if we're closed to any opportunities around us, we're not going to see them even if they're standing right in front of us. But if we keep ourselves open to all of those opportunities, one might come up and you might think, that's interesting. That could be something. You don't know until you try it, right? So I'm
Yep.
someone who I could walk down a hall and there's 5 doors open. Well, I'm going to go into each one of those doors and I'm going to check it out because I don't know what's in that room until I experience it. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people that are like, I don't like the color of that door. I'm not going to go through it. But it's like you have no idea what's waiting for you on the other side. So that's one thing I do love is the idea of putting yourself out there, allowing all those opportunities to come to you and experience them. And you're right about the timing because this was a very bizarre occurrence how I got this role. So I've loved horses my whole life. I got my first horse when I was 10 or 11. Just absolutely loved that lifestyle. I've always been a huge animal lover in all aspects. I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. That was kind of the path that I was on. So at 14, my parents said, well, if you're going to be in school for 12 years to be a veterinarian, you should probably figure out if you like it first. So they encouraged me to do up a resume. I went out to all the local vet clinics in my town. I was looked at as too young for a paid position at 14.
Yeah,
So,
probably.
but there was this one opportunity that I'm so thankful for. And Stony Brook Animal Hospital in London, Ontario, Christina called me back. She was the owner of the clinic and the head vet there. And she said, I really love how determined you are. And I agree that if you want to do this, you should kind of have a taste of what it's like. She says, we typically don't hire anyone younger than 18 for any of these positions. What if you came on board as a volunteer and you work for however many hours, and once we kind of establish where you're at, we can look at a paid position. So I was like, yeah, of course, let's do it. So I started volunteering there right away, and then shortly after I was offered a paid position because I was putting myself out there. I was working really hard. I was doing all of the jobs and I was passionate about it, right? So I was really like, whatever job you're doing, do it well, right? It doesn't matter
Right. For sure.
if it's where you want to be or you love it. I think that whatever you're doing, you do it with passion and you do it with love and commitment and dedication. And then that is going to propel you forward into whatever else you might want to be doing. So all through high school, I worked at this vet clinic. And over time, I kind of realized something in myself. I said, this isn't quite the job I was thinking of. I just wanted to be a veterinarian because I love animals. But this position is a lot more dealing with the owners than it is dealing with the animals.
The
And
bad animals.
Yeah.
it's so political, right? It's
Yeah.
extremely political because you might know what's right for the animal, or you might think you know what's right for the animal, but then the owner doesn't agree. And then you just get into this moral compass of how do I make things right? And then you go
Yeah.
home upset. And I learned a ton in my time at that clinic. And then I got to realize, I can still have animals in my life and not necessarily work with them on a daily basis. And I might even appreciate them more because I'm not working with them on a daily basis. So I was going through this whole realization. I decided that when I was done high school, I wanted to take a film and television program at Ryerson University in Toronto because that was
Ryerson.
another, there you go. That was another one of my passions. I thought, this is something that I want to explore a little bit more of. And during that time, I had always been involved in acting. So I started theater acting when I was 8 years old. Then, when I was 12, I got an agent out of Toronto and I would drive down for auditions. So this was still very much a part of my life. But up until this point, I never thought of acting, film, and television, anything in the arts, as an occupation. I thought I was doing it for fun. I thought this was something that was just a hobby of mine. I was always set, I'm going to be a veterinarian and then I'm going to act on the side. Like that was kind of my way of thinking. And so then graduated high school and I didn't get accepted to Ryerson. I got the big old rejection letter.
Dang.
And I
Bastards.
was devastated. devastated. I was like, I had this plan. Like, I knew exactly what I was going to do.
Wow, I bet you they are not happy right now with that decision. Someone
Yeah.
got axed on season one of Heartland. Someone lost their job. Sorry, go ahead.
So at this point, this is what you're talking about is like the word manifestation, or even the word of sometimes things happen for a reason,
Yes,
all of
ma'am.
that kind of thing. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take a year off, that whole gap year, to figure out what it is I really want to do. I'm going to reapply for Ryerson because I was also the person, and my parents were very encouraging of this too. They said, just because you get shot down once doesn't mean you shouldn't try again if it's what you want to do. So I reapplied, and now I was reapplying as a mature student, which actually gave me a better opportunity to get in because they have a whole different selection process for mature students, even though it was only a year. And so I really focused. Now I was like really determined because I'm like, I am not going to get shut down twice. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. So I put a lot of time, effort into just my application and everything that I had to submit, all that kind of stuff. During that year, I was working full time at the vet clinic because again, I needed to be making money. I needed to do something. And so I was doing that and I was still auditioning. So I ended up getting this role on this pilot called Saunders Farm, and it was filming in Ottawa. So I was like, "Oh, that's really exciting!" And it wasn't the Saunders Farm wasn't really a farm. It was more of like, well, I guess they did. It was like a crop farm, and there was these kids that were kind of a part of it, and it was a bit of a Halloween idea. So there was like scary side of it and all this. So I was
I'm
like, "Oh,
sorry.
this is
Just can I
fun."
open a parenthesis? This sounds terrible.
It sounds like the
Yes.
prequel to Children of the Corn.
Yes. So anyway, but I'm very excited to be doing, something that I love. And
Yeah.
so I'm in Ottawa filming this. And the reason I'm telling you this is because, again, it's all about timing. So this is still during that gap year that I was taking. I was working in the vet clinic. And again, like my boss at the vet clinic was so supportive and understanding of the acting side of things because I would just have to leave at the drop of a hat when I got an audition or something like that. I'd be like, hey, I know I'm supposed to work tonight, but I can't. And she was great, like very adaptable and understanding. So that was awesome. So I was in Ottawa filming this show. Heartland had all their auditions going on at the same time. But of course, when you're a working actor, you're on set, you're not necessarily auditioning for the things that are coming out.
Right.
And so they'd gone through their first, second, and third round of auditioning for Heartland. They had hired all of their other actors for every role, but they couldn't find Amy. They were trying to find someone who had experience with horses, but also could act and, had that specific look, looked like a farm girl, that kind of thing. And so I was on the train coming home from Ottawa filming this show. And my agent called me and he said, there's this show, they're just doing a pilot. It's called Heartland. He's like, but they're really looking for this horse girl. And he said, I thought of you right away. They still haven't found them. And, you have horses. So I figured you should probably just audition. So I was like, okay, I was super tired, had worked the full 2 weeks and now I'm headed home. He's like, the catch is they start filming in a few days and you have to submit your audition like either tonight or tomorrow morning.
Oh
I
my
was
God. Are
like,
your hands like bleeding at this point from husking corn the past 2 weeks?
yes, yes. And so I get home that night. I didn't even really have time to memorize all the lines. So I'm going
Wow.
to tell you a little secret here, what I did, because I self-taped. So I
I
feel like
heard about this. And when he sent it, it was tiny. You couldn't
well,
even see
that
it.
that too. So I
That's the kind of shit
self-taped
that
it.
happens to me. That's why I laugh so hard because, like, that's amazing you still got the job, though. That's how
Yeah.
good you are. Even
And
in
so I
tiny version, you were
self-taped
good.
this. I at the time had only access to put it on a VHS tape. That's all I could do. Like in
What
in my
year is
world.
this? What's
Oh,
going on? This can't be true.
this is true. There was yep. There was no smartphones. There was no so I like recorded it in an actual video camera onto the little
The
cassette
little
tape.
tapes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
mini
That's
VHSs, they called them. I don't
yeah.
know. That's made
And
that
so
up.
then I had a machine at the time that transferred it over to a VHS, so I was
Oh
able to
my.
do that. Then I had to take this VHS downtown bright and early. I was looking up all the places that would convert this file to an emailable file. So
Wow.
right at 8 o'clock, this place opened because they needed this tape by 10 or they were casting. So I rushed downtown. They put the VHS onto something that can be emailed. But you're right, when it came through, it was like this big on the screen. And so our producer Michael always talks about this. He's like, there was like five of us crowded around this computer screen and we're all trying to see. And he's like, this image of this girl, and I was wearing this plaid shirt and like braids. I think I had two braids. And he's like, as soon as you popped up and said, "Hi, I'm Amber Marshall, and my agent wanted me to tell you that I have horses of my own." And he's like, we all just went, I hope she can act. Because like I nailed every other part of the idea. So yeah, they watched it and it was also doing that loading thing. So
Oh,
not only was it this tiny little screen, but they would get through like 30 seconds and then have to wait for it to load and then go again. But there was something there, unanimously. Everybody just turned to each other and said, "Yep, call her agent. Let's bring her out." And so I think that was on a Wednesday. They called me on a Thursday, said, "Pack your bags, you're leaving Friday."
wow.
And so I packed all my stuff, still a little bit in shock because this was all happening so fast. Flew out to Alberta. I had my wardrobe fitting and all of that on the Saturday because we started shooting on the Monday.
What?
And so it was just such a whirlwind. Like everything happened at once. We had our read-throughs, everything was just going on. And then we filmed the pilot. And the thing about that is you never know if a series is going to be picked up. So when you shoot a pilot episode, that's great. But the majority of pilots that actually make it to series, I don't
Yeah.
know the
It's an
percentage,
insane number, right? It's like
very
87% or more like don't actually
don't
make it,
make
right?
it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, well, this was so fun. This was my dream job. This was awesome. But I probably won't ever see anything from this, right? Like in my head,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a negative person, but I'm also not someone that's hopeful for things. Like
Yeah.
I will do something and then I'll just be like, well, if it happens, great. If not, I'm moving on. Like I'm not going to sit and simmer or stir about it, like make all my plans based on it might happen, right?
Yeah.
So I went back home. I then shortly after got accepted to the Ryerson Film and Television Program.
Oh,
So I was like,
wow.
yes, like I did it. So I had planned to go because again, in my mind, I thought I did the pilot. It was fun. It was great, but that's all I'm ever going to see from it, probably.
Yeah.
And so then, come, I think it was June when I got the call that we were going to go for. So I'd like pretty much just got my acceptance letter, was planning for that. I even went down and started looking at residence and dorms and things like that, like planning all that idea.
Wow.
Uh,
What year was this? What year were we going to get into Ryerson?
2006.
Oh my God, we could have been friends. I was
Oh
there.
man.
That's so
That's
funny.
so funny.
We would have been the only horse people in a
I know,
600 mile
downtown
radius.
Toronto. Yeah. So it's funny how things work out like that. And so then I said, well, it was good for me. I think it was good for my insides to know that I had been accepted to Ryerson because then I didn't feel like if I had got a rejection letter again, I would have been like, what? So I kind of was on that path, but then I said, okay, so do I cancel this opportunity now to go to Ryerson and take this
So
series?
was that something you had to think about? Like, what was that
It
thought
wasn't
process
something I
like?
thought of for long, but yeah, because
Right.
it was one or the other. I
Yeah.
either was going to choose Heartland or choose the acceptance to university.
Wow.
And so at the time, and again, I didn't know if it was going to just be one season. So part of
Right.
me was like, well, what if we just go one season and then it's over and then I've blown my opportunity to go into school.
Yeah.
So at that point, though, I figured, and this was what all my friends and family said too, they're like, you are going to get so much valuable experience being on set, even if it's just for that first season,
Yeah.
that it will be greater than anything you're going to receive in your first year of schooling. And if it is something you still want to go into, I'm sure that opportunity will be there.
Yeah.
Whereas if you turn down this show, that opportunity is gone, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so that was it was one of those things where I thought about it, but I didn't think about it for long because I
Yeah.
knew in my gut that that was the right thing to do. Also, I loved Alberta. From the 3 weeks that I had spent out there, I was like,
Amen.
this is an opportunity to explore a new place where I might want to live. And at that time, I was 18 years old. I was in a really good position. I had nothing holding me down. So it was sort of like, here is a paid trip to go out and relocate and experience a different culture, a different place,
Yeah.
different people, all of those opportunities. So yeah, it was kind of a no-brainer. I jumped on the plane and went out there, and it was cool because it was a whole different way, even in the acting world, from what I was used to, because I had done film projects in Ontario and the East Coast. But it was a very different vibe. Alberta was very laid back, easygoing. I just felt at home instantly.
Speaking of laid back and easygoing, let's talk about the Wranglers on the set of Heartland here for a minute. Usually a pretty fun crowd hanging around there. And I chatted with a little bird this morning, and he wanted me to bring up how you had to end up buying him a new pair of sunnies because he ended up with a black eye on set one day.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
that would be Colt.
Yep.
Um, so the Wranglers honestly make my day better every day.
Love to hear
Uh,
it.
they're my people, so to speak. I love being around the horse people. We talked about at the beginning of this how you learn from the people around you, and from 18 years of being on the show, I get to learn from the best of the best. And so I think that everyone that comes onto set brings a different idea, a different vision. But collectively, we're all wanting the same thing. We want this to be authentic. We want it to be real. We want the horse stuff to be epic, but at the same time safe. And, like there's a lot of different
Yeah.
facets to it because we are working with live animals. And the more of a pressure situation, you're not going to get what you want out of those horses. We talked about the calm nature of Dan James and just spreading that throughout the cast and crew so that the animals feel comfortable to do what they're doing. So this
Mhm.
gets to my story. So we were filming in an area where there was a ton of fallen down tree debris. So it was kind of this mix, and it was a beautiful spot, big tall aspens, the grass was long and blowing in the wind, but there was a lot of fallen branches and things like that. And so they had said, "Hey, Wranglers, can you go into this area where, because I was just going to be trotting this horse around, like, can you just like pick up some of the fallen debris, make sure that there's no going to be no tripping hazards, all that kind of stuff." So Colt, who's very ambitious and like eager, he runs down there. He's like, "Yep, yep, sure." And so he takes his rope off the saddle, puts it around this tree branch, and I think he either jumped on his horse and dallied onto his horn to like pull it away, I think is what happened. And the branch snaps and flies back and hits him right in the face, knocks him back onto the ground. And I was there for it. And I turned and I was like, "Are you okay?" And he gets up and he turns to me, and his brand new Beck sunglasses are cracked right down the front. And he's got this like bloody gash down the side of his face. And I was like, "It's a good thing you had your safety glasses on. Like, you could have lost an eye."
I have
Like,
I
yeah,
have pictures of this man's black eye. It will be on the YouTube version of this because
excellent,
it looks like
excellent.
he took a right hook from Mike Tyson. This thing is like swollen shut, man, like a freaking plum on his
Yeah.
No.
face.
I got
Wow.
updated pictures every day. So then I felt awful. So then I was like, "Don't worry, come meet me." So I have a store, side note,
Yeah.
our
We'll
country
get to that.
store, and we sell the same sunglasses. So I said to him, I was like, "We're not open on Mondays," or it was maybe Sunday. I said, "We're not open on Sundays, but I'm going to come in with you. I'll open the store and you can pick whatever Beck sunglasses you want for your duty." Like you just
Oh my God, that's
That is
so
so
funny.
good. So
But
everybody, Amber Marshall is a charitable woman looking
yeah,
after the Wranglers.
after she
That's
almost
huge.
killed you.
I did feel awful because, like, he's doing his part to make sure we're safe. And I was like, maybe make sure that the branch is, not completely dead before you start pulling it. It's just gonna snap off. But
Oh my
um,
God. And how
Too
about you,
good.
Amber? For 18 years, like being around horses for a day, anything can happen. The most broke horse can kill you in a second because of a plastic bag. Have you had any moments, shooting that you thought, this is it, I'm done. Like I ain't surviving this one.
no, yeah, I'm sure we could get into lots of stories, but No, because we have so many people on set that are there to make sure we're safe.
Yeah.
Just like that idea that I just mentioned, they
Yeah.
want to make sure that everything is done in a way that isn't going to compromise our actors. Because if I was to get hurt, poor Colt, yeah, his face looked awful for a few weeks, but he didn't have to be on camera. If that
Yeah.
happened to me, we would
Oh,
have to take 2 weeks off until I was looking half decent or
yeah.
somehow write it
Or
in.
right
And
to the show. It's
but
Yeah.
even with that, the
yeah.
continuity of it, we've
Right.
probably already shot several days that would have
Right.
been put in the script after that
Yeah.
day. So it's because we're not shooting in shooting order, or sorry, in script order. So there's a lot to it. And so we also have amazing stunt doubles. And I think that's really where I haven't had those oh shit moments, so to
Yeah.
speak, because we have very talented people that are taking those risks for us. So, for
Yeah.
example, if there's a scene where Amy's flying full tilt across an open field, we usually want a stunt performer to do that because, like you said, you never know if there's going to be a gopher hole, there's going to be something that that horse could trip on,
Yeah.
flip over, whatever it might be. And we have had some scary things happen to our stunt performers, but they also know, I guess, what they've signed up for. It's sort of
Yeah.
like when you go in the rodeo arena, it's like that you've signed up for a potential injury or worse, right? Like that's in the back of your mind. And so I think that by having all of those safety protocols in place, it's been amazing for all of us who are there day in and day out working with these very large animals who, like you said, you could have an extremely broke horse, but something happens and you could never plan for that. So I would say the most oh shit moment I've had would be way back early seasons when I was riding Spartan, who was played by a horse named Stormy. And he was younger.
Yeah.
He was probably about 5 or 6 at the time. And he could get a little sassy. And, if he wasn't rode hard in the morning, he would show you. And there's a scene where I was supposed to be running down the driveway yelling. And so, of course, as horse people, we know that whatever we're conveying as far as our energy, the horse is probably going to look to that and say, what's going on? Where's the fire type idea?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but when you're acting, you have to be present in that moment and you have to just be letting out that anger or that excitement or whatever your character is supposed to be feeling. So here I am running full tilt on this horse down the driveway. I'm screaming, yelling, because I'm supposed to be, and that horse starts bucking. And as soon as he started, I was like checking him, and then I'm like, nope, this isn't going well. And I just did the old like tuck and roll because that's what I used to do as a
Oh,
kid all the time. I had a horse that bucked on me all the time, and I got
Oh.
really good at the tuck and roll. And so my brain instantly just went back to that. So we're going, going, going. I tuck and roll. I actually did a perfect like roll, jump up, and then my instinct is catch the horse. So I'm like
Oh.
simultaneously hit the ground, roll, jump up, and then just start running as fast as I can towards the horse that's going that way. And I was fine. Like I wasn't sore the next day, nothing. But that was the moment where I was like, I understand how acting with animals in this situation can be very difficult because they don't understand why you're using these emotions in this moment, right? They're saying, "Why are you yelling? What's wrong? What's happening? What's..." So it's interesting for me because going forward, if there was anything that I knew was going to be very emotional in like a excitable or angry way, I would try to plan it so that we weren't at a full out run or I wasn't on the horse. Like most of that stuff would happen in the round pen or something where I'm on the ground. Because if I'm yelling and screaming at a horse in the round pen, at least it can just keep going and be confused,
Yeah.
but not necessarily have me on its back at that moment. So I think there's things over the years, tips and tricks I've learned, not just as a horse person, but in the world of acting, how you can accomplish a certain task without sacrificing the horse or that moment itself.
well, that ties back to what we talked about earlier of your guys' involvement in, scenes, the structure, the dialogue, setting things up for success versus, oh,
Mhm.
you want me to run at a full sprint while yelling? No, that's not gonna fly because I don't want to tuck and roll today. Like, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show what you said earlier as well that it is a learning experience, and you guys are getting better with every season, every day. And it was all new, right? You had never done this before when you started, but looking back now, 18 years later, you've garnered so much experience. But I want to get away from Heartland for a second here because I follow you on Instagram. You have a huge Instagram presence. Your videos are amazing. You're feeding the YouTube. Like, I don't know how you do all these things. We need like a 3-part interview with Amber because we're almost at the end of this one and I have a million questions. But are you building an ark? I have never met anybody that has as many animals as you do. How many animals do you have at that farm, and why so many animals?
Well, why is because I love it. As with anyone who has a passion, has a hobby, you just want to be surrounded by the things that you love.
Yeah.
And that's also, it's my form of meditation. We talk about how in such a busy time, my life is very busy.
Yeah.
What do I want to do when I come home? I'm not a TV watcher. I know that's weird for someone who has spent an entire lifetime being on TV, but I don't come home and turn on the TV. In fact, I've actually never turned on the TV when I'm by myself ever, like since
Wow.
I was a child.
That's amazing.
It's just not something I do. Like I'll sit down and watch a show with my husband at night because that's something he likes to do, and that's time we can sit together. But I'm not a TV person. So when I come home, my time to unwind, my time to just relax and feel in my present self is the time I'm spending with my animals. And it is a balance. It's definitely a fine line because the more animals I bring home, the more responsibility I have, and the more I feel like I'm kind of need to be present for them, right? So it's like it's not just like if I was into a puzzling or like something. I'm trying to think of something that I could come home and it
Quilting.
could sit there. Quilting, thank you. If I was into quilting, that quilt could sit there and wait for me whenever I had the time to finish it. But with animals, it's that presence that needs constant care. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to them because
That's
I
awesome.
think I like that thought that it's like even if you're tired, you're sick, you're whatever, you need to be present for them.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so anyone I talk to that has animals in their life, they're like, you know what, I love it because it's my daily motivation. It's what literally
Yeah.
gets me out of bed because I have to get up and go feed or I have to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And I
It's
love that.
unbelievable that you just said that. Sorry, but being present, like animals make you have to be present. Horses, and we're losing that today. And I find that a lot of people having problems with mental health, whether it's depression or anxiety, we've gone so far away from the natural world and this
Yes.
instinct that's in our DNA as humans, to feed animals, to work with the land and be connected to it. So that's very interesting what you said. I totally believe in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think because a lot of people they always ask me, do you suffer with any type of mental health? Do you have things that you do to make you happy? And I don't have any feelings of depression or things like that. And I believe that's because of the life that I live and I'm outdoors so often. The sunshine, the fresh air, all of that contributes to good mental health.
Yeah.
And I think for me, having those animals, again, it's this idea of they need you, rain, snow, or shine. So, even though today it is minus 27, wonderful,
Tell me
and
about
a
it.
foot and a half of snow. But what did I do this morning? I was out actually catching horses at 7, and out like, still dark out. But I felt so good when I came in. You go out, you have that fresh air. I wasn't even cold because I was actually trying to chase around my husband's horse Hippie who didn't want to be caught. And I came in and I was just like dripping with sweat. And I was like, oh, and you feel a bit of that frustration. Like,
Yeah.
why did you have to send me running around the field at 7 a.m. when it was dark? But
Yeah.
at the same time, you feel so much more energized
Alive.
and
You just feel
alive and ready
alive.
for the day. It's so
Yeah.
true. So
Yeah.
that would be, I guess, why I have my animals because I love caring for them. And people also ask like, "Oh, you must have farm hands and you have people that come and no, because that's not why I have them. I don't
Yeah.
have them to look at them out the window and
Yeah.
say, "Oh, they look so pretty out there. Oh, look, George is out feeding them this morning." And like that's not why I have animals. I have animals
Yeah.
because I love the interactions with them. And
That's awesome.
so that's the balance that I have to find myself in. And my husband always tells me, he's like, don't get like last night I showed him a picture of a kitten that needed to be taken home. He's like, why? Why? Don't even look at
Sean's
it.
like, no more animals.
Yes, he tells me all the time. But it's because he knows the pressure I put on myself to care for them. And so he's like, you bring in one more. And I was like, yeah, but we already have cats. There's already cat food. So it's fine. It's just one more. It's like, but there has to be that balance because the more animals you bring in, the more work that there is. And then the more stress I put on myself because I'm like, especially with traveling, as you
Yeah,
know, you
yeah,
travel
yeah.
and you're relying on someone else to look after your animals. And to me, I don't like that because I want to be the one there. I want to be feeding them. I want to be present. So yeah, I guess the question of what I have here right now, I have cows, horses, chickens, ducks. I added some peacocks to my flock. I
Nice.
have dogs, cats. So just a little bit of everything really. And here's the thing too, is for those people who are watching that don't live in a four-season environment, winter in Alberta can be 8, 9 months.
Hmm.
It's a very long period of time when you have to be on
Yeah,
freezing waters and heaters in
yeah,
coops and proper bedding and shelters and extra feed and all of these things that make it quite a struggle to be an animal owner in this area because in the summer it's easy. My horses and cows are out on pasture. They're happy. It's a perfect climate. My chickens are out free ranging. I don't even really have to feed them that much. They're just having the great time of being out doing their own thing. But the second that temperature drops below zero,
yeah.
we have so many other, I guess, just things to think of and chores to do because all of our waters have to be on electric heaters and like just the things that people who don't live in a climate like this don't even really think about. So winter always makes me go, why? Why
Yeah.
do I do this?
Yeah, there's a beach in Mexico
Yeah.
calling my name, and I'm out here busting waters and
Yeah.
pulling chunks of ice out. This is great.
Yeah.
That's
That's so funny,
phenomenal.
man. Because go ahead, Cole.
I was just gonna say, we can tell the passion that you have for the animals, whether it's on the screen or on your social media. Like you have that presence with them, and I can't imagine how many people you have motivated and pushed into the direction of getting into horses, whether it be for the mental health side of things, like their own or whatever they're dealing with. Like the power of the horse is so huge, and you've probably impacted hundreds of thousands of lives with what you're doing.
No, I appreciate you saying that. And it is something that I constantly think about because I do have parents, kids, whoever coming to me all the time saying, I really want to get into riding, or my daughter really wants to get into horses, or whatever it might be. And I always encourage it because of that
Hmm.
mental health aspect of it.
Yeah,
And then I also hear the stories of, my daughter was going through a really hard time, or whatever it might be, or me personally, I was suffering from an illness that put me into quite a depression. And it wasn't until watching your show that I was inspired to go out and start taking lessons or go even to a local center where I could just be present with animals. And all of a sudden I started to feel better. It started to really turn my mood around. And there's principles that I live by, but I always know that when I am ever feeling unmotivated or down in any way, going outside all of a sudden gives me that spark of, all right, I'm ready to tackle it. And it's this really scary cycle you can get into because if you don't have a purpose to go outside and you're inside all the time, then you start to feel down. And then you feel down so you don't want to go outside. And then you never have that kind of jolt or that boost to give you that sense of purpose again, that sense of just revitalization of what you actually need. So I
Hmm.
always encourage people anytime they say, oh, I wish I could be like you and have a farm and all this kind of stuff. You don't have to have a farm and have animals to experience this. Sometimes it's just looking up in your local community. Is there an opportunity for me to go out and clean stalls every other morning? Is there an opportunity for me to go and like most of these places will pay you to do this. So it's not something that financially you have to give up a whole bunch of money to be a part of this idea. There are
yeah,
lots of places where you can volunteer for sure and go and help, maybe it's a therapeutic riding center where you go out and you're a lead walker and you walk these horses around and you see the impact that these horses have on the people that are there. And just that in itself is something that will completely change your life. And so there's opportunities out there. You don't have to have tons of money. You don't have to own a horse or own a property or anything like this to have these experiences. Just look in your local area where the demand is, where it's needed. You know, can I go out and just clean stalls or brush horses or anything like that? And just, I guess, just get out there and start.
Yeah, I think we'll never be able to quantify the effect you've had and the series Heartland as a whole has had on people's lives around the world, right? Whether it's, hey, go get a horse or just face your fears. You know, it starts with, you know, you're in a terrible situation, your mother's passed away, but you find horses to get you out of that. And I think the show, and maybe that's the reason why it's so successful. I'm sure there's tons of reasons, but it's such a positive light in people's lives. You know what I mean? And you say it all the time. It's a show that you can watch with your grandpa, with your grandson, your uncle, you know, whereas television today is tough, right? It's either they're killing each other or it's a kid's show. So yeah, what Cole said, totally sign underneath it. Thank you for all the, you know, everything you're doing. And there's a documentary you're involved with called the Rescued Hearts documentary. I can't wait to watch it. It talks about this, you know, this positive energy that horses are in our lives, in our hearts, in our systems, in our brains. It's unbelievable what they do for us. I can't wait to watch it. So if you're watching this episode or listening to it, check it out. See how you can watch it. Rescued Hearts documentary. And we're getting to the end here of our interview. Again, thank you so much for doing this. You did not have to do this. We're just starting our podcast. And that again goes to show the kind of person you are. You know, you're a real person. And it's hard to find people like that these days, especially when they've found fame and success as you found through your show. We got 2 final questions we're going to ask you. I'm going to handle the first one. Cole's going to ask one that we ask all our guests, but just simply, I want you to tell us, what does the horse mean to you? What does the horse mean to your life?
Oh, that's a very broad question.
That's a deep Brazilian question right there.
I know.
Those are the only questions I got, motherfuckers.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? Like the horse has essentially put me where I am. So I owe everything that's in my life right now to a horse. And that sounds so cliche, but I think, you know, when we really dive into it, civilization wouldn't be where it is today if we didn't have horses, right? Like
Amen.
horses have
Amen.
propelled us along for thousands of years. And for myself personally, on my own personal journey, if at 4 years old, when I refused to get off the pony merry-go-round and my parents hadn't have recognized that and said, you know what, this girl really loves horses, I think like most 4-year-old girls.
Tony the pony.
Tony the pony.
I actually have him here today.
Yeah.
Come on, Tony. No, Tony's
That's
not
so
here.
funny. But you know, it's moments like that, and my parents recognized that, and they said, let's give her this opportunity. This is something that she really is gravitating towards, and they kind of understood. My mom had horses growing up, so she's like, it's a healthy hobby. This is something that is good for kids. This isn't, you know, one of those other, like nowadays, there's so much, I guess, with YouTube and gaming and all this kind of stuff, there's so many reasons for kids not to go outside. And that's a very scary thought.
Mhm.
And I love the aspect of Heartland showing people that there's more to life than just, you know, a screen. And again, like you're watching the show on a screen, but I do feel like it's encouraging families and young adults and whoever to get outside, to spend more time together, to sit around the table and have dinner together. It's almost, you know, a lost art. And this is so scary to me because, and this is one of the things you brought up today, you know, I didn't have to take this call, all of that. Communication and real conversations is something that is becoming less and less involved in our daily lives. And this is something that I feel extremely strongly about. We're getting most of our human connections through social media, and it's one-sided.
And it's fake.
It's fake. And it's not only that, it's not a conversation.
Yeah.
When you're scrolling through your device and you're hearing people talk about a subject, well, yeah, that's them talking about it, but there's no debate. There's no way for you to retort and say, oh, but have you ever thought of this? Or, okay, you feel that way. There's none of that. And that is essential to any type of human connection, you have to be able to have that understanding and that connection and that feedback and that debate. You don't have to believe everything I say today. In fact, I
Yeah.
encourage you to test me on it and say, but have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Because that's what makes us grow and that's what makes us move forward as a civilization. So the fact that we've moved into this age, and I know I'm getting on a bit of a rant here, but I do think it's important to talk about the fact that we've gone into this technical age of screen time where most importantly you see our young people who don't understand what it's like to have an actual conversation with a human being because
Yeah.
even when they're with their friends they're texting, they're on their
Yeah.
phones. There's none of this because even this,
Well,
yes, we're on a screen right now, but
yeah.
we're
But we're
having
communicating. But not only do they, I'll go further, not only do these young people not understand, they get extreme anxiety from the thought of doing it. And
Yeah.
that's what scares me a lot, as well as same things you're saying. Because it's like, what does the future look like? If you can't communicate, if you can't converse, if you can't, learn from other people and their experiences. And it's like,
yeah,
we're going to be robots, right? And I think that is the answer.
yeah.
Good luck, everybody. Every man for themselves. We're
Yeah.
dead.
Oh, thanks. This was a wonderful end to
Yeah, what
No,
a great podcast.
I did want to bring that up just because anyone who's watching or listening to this today is
Yeah.
probably doing it through a screen.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that, it is so important to have that human connection. And I feel like what we're doing right now, like-minded people who want to have a conversation, is
Yeah.
something that you shouldn't turn down in your life. And even for myself, I've made it a priority because I am very busy. I'm traveling all the time, but I try to each week have a coffee with a different friend. And so sitting down face to face, whether it's a half an hour or 3 hours,
Yeah.
it's something where I take time out of my day and say, you know what, let's meet up and let's catch up. And I think that those moments in our life are something that we need to prioritize. And that human connection is something that we're social creatures. We're like horses. We
Yeah.
we need that herd environment. And yeah, some of us, like I myself, am a bit of an introvert. I like to be at home alone. I don't like I don't excel in super populated areas and all this kind of stuff, which is funny in my business. That's something that I just have to do and I've had to get used to. And I enjoy it now because I've learned certain ways to take it in and enjoy it. But I think for anyone, regardless of you're an introvert, an extrovert, whatever personality type you've given yourself or someone else has given you, I believe that human connection comes first and being able to go out and just talk. Talk with your friends, talk with the people around you, learn from them, give them a bit of wisdom. Everybody's learning from
Yeah.
each other and you might have a perspective on something that they haven't thought about and vice versa. So I think that is essential. So back to the horse question. Horses. Horses have brought me here, and in doing so, I feel like they have given me a perspective on life that I never would have paid attention to if it hadn't been for the horse.
I love it. That's phenomenal. And it sounds like you've created some very healthy habits amongst the chaos. So that's very cool. So our final question to wrap this all up, we love to ask our guests that the podcast is should have been a cowboy. So we like to ask people, if you aren't a cowboy, what kind of cowboy would you be? But since you are already a cowgirl, if you weren't, okay, this is kind of tough because you're living the ultimate dream. You're a cowgirl, you're an actress, you've combined it. So if you weren't a cowgirl in real life and a cowgirl on the screen, what do you think Amber Marshall would be doing?
See, and that's such a crazy thought because we talk about timing, we talk about all those things that have happened in my life that have propelled me to where I am. So what happens if I hadn't have got accepted into Ryerson? I said, you know what? I just want to be a vet assistant the rest of my life. And I just stayed at the job I was at and continued to do that because I was very happy there. I loved what I was doing. And so I could have continued on that path. Or what if I had said no to Heartland and then gone into the Ryerson Film and Television program and been living in Toronto, which is such a contrasting life to what I'm doing now. The hustle and
Yeah.
bustle of a huge metropolis and being in a line of work that even though that's what I'm doing today, I'm doing it in the most rural way possible.
Mhm.
My office is not a downtown Toronto building.
Yeah.
It is a farm with animals, and like it's as rural as you can possibly get in the world of film and television. So I can't even begin to guess what I would be doing if I wasn't doing what I am now. But there's things I know for certain. I would have always and will always have animals in my life in some form of capacity, because that's what makes me feel the most, I guess, just present and content, is having animals around me. I feel like I would have been doing a job that, even if it wasn't my full-time job, I would be working with animals in some regard.
Mhm.
Whether it even be, working at volunteering at a humane society, or something like that. I always want to be helping animals. And I guess, like, I don't think I would have been in Alberta if it hadn't been for Heartland. So that's something I think about all the time, because I've now been here for 18 years and this is very much my home. And well after Heartland's over and done, this is my home. So
Mhm.
I can't imagine how my life would have shaped out if I had have stayed in Ontario, or if I would have stayed in Ontario. These are all the big questions that we don't know. But um, to answer your question, I am exactly where I want to be, where I'd hope to be, and I can't imagine any other life that would give me so much fulfillment and enjoyment. And I'm happy being an Alberta cowgirl.
I feel like you are the great white buffalo. You've figured out to combine the loves into what it is you want to do. The fact that you didn't have an answer says it all, honestly. And you
Yeah.
know what they say about Berta? Once you go Berta, you never go further. I don't think anybody says that.
Born again, Albertans
That
here.
one I
Once you,
have not heard. So thank you for that.
Oh, well,
Amber,
this
thank
has
you so,
been phenomenal.
thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much
you
for your
so
time.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I appreciate you guys, and I love your outlook. And I was excited for this chat today. So I appreciate you reaching out to me, and maybe we check in a year or two, and
Yeah.
there's always new conversations to be had. And I think that we're in a position to inspire people, and to share what we've created, and what looks like our perfect world. So what does that mean to someone else, right? How can they
Yeah.
achieve happiness and contentment in their own lives? And I think that, you can't tell someone how to feel it, but you can tell them what works for you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just the beginning of the conversation.
That's it. We're going to hold you to that. 1 year from now, we will grab coffees and record the second episode with Amber Marshall.
Hell yeah.
Thank you so much, Amber.
My pleasure. Take care, you
Have
guys.
a,
Have
have
a
a
good
great
one.
day. Yeah, man. I think be present. That's the theme of that episode to me. Be present, man. Like, her life changed in such a second that you could have said no, you could have not sent the tape, you could have been too tired to go to Toronto to figure out a way to get it from the VHS to a computer, and her entire life would have changed. She would not be here telling her story today.
Man, I kind of like stuff like that. I relate back to like your situation, right? Like when Bruiser fell in that hole, and it's just like, okay, I have a horse in a situation, but I got to get my camera out and film it, because
Yeah.
this is the shit that will help make or break a documentary or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
that was a make or break for her to just be like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm coming back on this train from Ottawa. I got to get this tape. And it wasn't
Yeah.
just a film on the iPhone and fire it off in an email, like she said. Like you legit had to go old school on them with the VHS, man. That's crazy.
Right. So, and it's funny to think about, but like, how many people would not have sent that tape in? You know what I
Right?
mean? Like, a
Absolutely.
lot. And it changes the trajectory of your life. 1 second, one missed opportunity. So be present. Be present. That's the theme of the episode. Amber Marshall. What are we gonna say about her, man? Like, I loved her prior to this. I love her more now. Like, what a salt of the earth. Just a great person.
Her perspective on so many things was incredible.
Yeah.
Like even talking about Dan James right off the bat, and like
Yeah.
just the art
Yeah.
of the art of the horse, and being calm and present
Yeah.
and cool and collected with them. And you
Yeah.
can get them to do A, B, and C for you in so many different ways. And she's got to
Yeah.
learn and be a part of seeing how you can get one to do all those things, and has now developed her own style and applied that to her life.
Yeah, man. Like, you literally, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's at its core. With a horse, every day, every time you go to get on, you have to control all your fears, your anxieties, the monsters that live inside you. Like, what other discipline, hobby, what other thing makes you do that every single day or 3 times a week or however many times you're getting on this animal, and that trains you, I think, to be a better human and to control your anxieties and these feelings that so many people have a hard time with. But yeah, liberty is at the core of that. You see what they do with Dan and all these amazing horsemen and women that do liberty. Like, as a horseman, you see them do these things. You're like, this is impossible. Like,
Yeah.
maybe if I wasn't a horseman, I'd say this is possible, but I know horses. I rode a freaking horse from Alaska to Ushuaia, and
Yeah.
I'm saying this is impossible. Like, how are these people doing this? And it takes that, like, that kind of freaking being in the moment that's so strong that you're completely connected to this animal. And anyways, it was just insane, bro. I have so many questions. Like, I didn't answer half the freaking questions I had.
I know. I still got a bunch written out here, but and we called it though, like just such a good chat. She had so much to say about anything we asked and gave us so much more than we asked for. So I'm really stoked.
I'm stoked, man. What an opportunity. Thank you, Amber. Go watch Heartland if you haven't watched yet. It's amazing. And stay tuned for the next episode of Should Have Been a Cowboy, baby.
Should have been a cowboy.